C Butters Tech channel, and today we're taking a look at some 3D printing. It's been a little bit since I have done any 3D printing on the channel, although I've been doing it personally for a long time now. If you haven't seen, I built different computer cases, 3D printed. You can find those on my channel. But today I'm looking at this Prusa Mark 3S Plus. I built this from the kit just recently. I have another Mark 3S that I upgraded to Mark 3S Plus in the last month or so. And I've gotten real familiar with the device, having built two machines, taken these apart to add my custom color scheme. In fact, if you look at my two printers together, if you can guess what the color scheme is, go ahead and drop that in the comments. But I wish I would have known this while I was building the machines, but I somehow had not heard of this, the RapidChange Revo 6. Now, I bought two of these to put in both of my printers, although I'll only be doing one for now until the hardened nozzles come out, because the other unit here, I have an enclosure, and I use that for printing higher temperature materials, and I don't want to, you know, I want to keep that capability for now. What does this allow you to do? Well, anyone of you who have messed with 3D printers know that there's a couple things that suck when they happen. And one of those is when your nozzle gets clogged up and you have to tear apart your hot end in order to clear that or take your nozzle off, or if you just want to change nozzles. I've experimented recently with printing in a 0.6 millimeter nozzle, and I've had great results in increasing my print speed for functional prints that way. So in order to facilitate that, the Revo 6, what that lets you do is quickly swap your nozzles. And it comes stock with a 0.4, just like your normal Prusa would come with. But these nozzles, they just screw right off. So you screw this, pull it out, put a new nozzle in, and you're good to go. And you don't have to heat up the hot end. You don't have to, deal with like all the mess and, getting your screwdriver out and your wrench and kind of cranking it around. That can be quite difficult sometimes. So this hot end is a direct drop-in replacement because the Prusa already uses an E3D V6 hot end, and the Revo 6 is meant to be a drop-in replacement. Should be 100% good to just drop it in. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. I've never done it before, but we're going to see how it goes, and I think we'll be able to swap it pretty quickly. I'm pretty familiar with how all the nuts and bolts and pieces of this. One thing I will say is we will be taking this fan off. We won't need it for the Mark III. There is a Prusa edition of this that is sold that you don't need to buy. The only thing that changes are the length of the cables. Can be a little bit different to make it fit better, but it's really not an issue getting the original because any extra slack you can just bundle up and zip tie and secure right in your box here. It's not going to look any different. It's not going to be an issue. You could even trim those wires if you wanted, but it's really not necessary. So you want the 24 volt version of the Revo 6 for if you're doing it on a Mark III or Mark 3S, Mark 3S Plus. Let's go ahead and see how it goes. Now, the tools that you're going to need to complete this job, you're going to want, I've got a nice Allen wrench set here from Wera. We're primarily going to be using this 2.5 millimeter, the green one. And you'll want to wait to take off your zip ties with some clippers, screwdrivers, and you'll need an additional 2 zip ties in order to repackage this up on your hot end on the Prusa. So with that said, we've got our materials, we've got our items. I'm going to go ahead and just do kind of a time lapse of this basically and show you exactly what you need to do to pull this apart and get it in there. Hopefully it goes pretty smoothly. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so first thing first, we're going to get the fan off of this Revo here, and I'm pretty sure it's just going to kind of lightly snap out of here, is my guess. Yeah. So the fan just pops right off. You've got your hot end. The size should look familiar if you've built a Prusa before. So I'm just gonna set the hot end aside. Now, the first thing you're gonna want to do, let me make sure that I'm focused here. So we're gonna take this fan off. And I like to just obviously keep the screws together so you know which ones you have. And this we're just going to tuck in between the mesh here. Now there's 2 screws on either side, and let me make sure that we have a really great angle on everything that's happening here. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and hit up these 2 screws on either side. And I'm just going to loosen those. And then I'm also going to hit the fan screws. So we're going to hit these 2 up. And these ones will take completely off. And this bottom one is connected to the fan. And it's slightly longer. So we're going to go ahead and you can pull that out. You can just leave it on as well. So now you've got this super loose. What we're going to do now is go on the back here and undo this screw. And that's going to release the extruder motor. I'm going to also release the extruder cover. And before you let that out, it's probably not a bad idea to take off the extruder clamping screw off. And this one has a spring on the end. And now we'll continue to do these 2 top ones. And the goal here is not to release the entire extruder assembly. All you want to do is release the motor. And with those all loose, it will start to pull away. That's our side extruder. Let's see, it's just catching on something here in the middle. So for me, it was catching on this item that has the ball inside. So I'm just going to take that off. Normally you wouldn't have to do that. Okay, so I'm also releasing the inside, or loosening these inside fan bolts, which there it is. Okay. So now that we've exposed our E3D hot end, we're going to come on the back and we're going to actually clip very carefully the zip ties on either side. Although no actuality, since this one's coming out. I mean, you don't want to destroy a perfectly working hot end. Okay, so we've removed our zip ties. And we're going to go ahead and let that fall out. What we're going to do at this point is try to recover this Teflon tubing. So I'm going to lift up on the tubing while pushing down, and that lets it come right out. You can see we've got a little bit of material in there. And what you can do with the new hot end is, this is a brand new printer, so I'm going to be able to reuse it. So I'll take off this clip. And this tubing, the tapered end should go in, and this is meant to be a one-to-one replacement. However, you'll see that it is taller than it would have been otherwise. So you're still going to have to I'll show you again. So in the stock hot end, it went all the way down. So, and it's going up to that level. Where on the new one, you can see that it's going to be much too tall. So we're going to have to trim this down. So the best thing to do is make a mark with a Sharpie where we need to cut this.
Do you have any like little skinny wire?
Wire for what?
Well, I need legs for my shirt.
Okay, so I happen to have this tool right here, which there is a printables item that you can look at, but we're going to use this to just clean out that PTFE tubing and try to get that to open up. And once you have some of that done, it's not a bad idea to just clean it up, make sure there's nothing in it. I'm just using the end of this zip tie. You can throw some filament down in there. But the point is you need to have a tapered head on this thing. Once that's done, we should be good to go. Make sure that goes in there to the right height. And just do a little bit of a test fit and make sure that it is looking good, which it is. So what I'm going to do is before I put this in, I'm going to tighten this back up to get these screws nice and tight. I mean, not overly tight or anything, but it's kind of hard to get to them when they're back behind it like that. So this is a good opportunity to make sure that you have them you know, torque down to a comfortable level. And with that done, I'm going to put the cables going backwards. And we'll get this back in place. Put that back in place. We can flip our motor. Make sure that you don't lose any of your magnets while in the process of doing this. Be careful with this clip. Make sure your cables go inside that clip before you try to push it down. And if you make sure all that's clear, it goes in quite nicely. And then these free-floating ones on the back, these screws you can kind of just push in, and that will hold it in place like that for you to get everything else ready. So let's go ahead and PETG is just kind of sticky, so sometimes even though it should slide right through, you need to kind of screw it through. Make sure it's getting aligned properly. Make sure all your pieces are fitting flush. And then you don't want to just tighten one down all the way. You want to kind of do it evenly. So make sure you're doing one side and then the other. And now that's on there nice. I'm going to do this top screw. Pull the motor in flush. And before I tighten that down too much, I took this top piece out. Make sure your ball's in there if this comes out. I really shouldn't have let that come out, but I did. So we'll push that down in there. Very nice. All right, this extruder piece can go up on the top. And we'll get that screw back in. And like I say, you want to slowly tighten all these screws down before you tighten them all the way, just to make sure that everything is flush, it's aligned properly. What I like to do on this is I let this kind of like, I know this balances out, so I tighten it a little bit and then I let go. I tighten it a little bit and I let go, and if it stays, I know I need to back it out until it pops out. And that's the right amount of pressure on this back screw. The other screws can take a little bit more pressure because they're not acting as a hinge. So this top one is nice. That's nice and, you know, tight enough that you start to put a little bit of pressure on it, but you really don't need to crank this down. The PETG is pretty grippy. You want it firm, but you don't want it strained, if that makes sense. And again, make sure your wires are all okay. The small screw goes here. And the longer screw goes on this one. And you want to make sure that catches into your fan shroud, which it should, especially on the MK3S Plus. And now we've got that all tied down. We can put the top piece on. Just like that. And same thing here, you can kind of drop like a piece of filament, make sure it's lined up. Again, this one just kind of firm, not super tight. And now, should be able to get this last piece on. Got our 2 longer screws. These ones also don't need a ton of pressure on them. You don't want to strain the housing of the fan. Just nice and firm. And that right there is our extruder rebuilt, but we have to get this screw in as well. So hold this flat to keep it level, and then we're going to push in and tighten. Just like that until this catches and doesn't flap out by itself. And then on this side, we want it basically flush. I like it just slightly raised off of flush. So now we've got the whole thing rebuilt with our old hot end kind of floating at the bottom. So let's take a look at the back of the device now. So we definitely want this to come out of the shroud. But first things first, let's go ahead and open up our little black box here. Okay. And so once you have this open, you're going to want to also remove these 2 screws at the top so we can get to that shroud. And I like to break this loose evenly as well. Don't want to add too much strain on the parts. So once we back those out, you don't need to take those out all the way before this comes off, so that way you can keep the screws in it. And with that, we can kind of pull. Now I tend to wrap mine quite tightly. I like having it nice and secure. So I'm gonna have to unwrap this quite a bit. There's that piece of nylon that goes through a hole up here. So if you pull out the nylon like that, that's gonna get all your wires released. And now I'm gonna unwrap the whole thing. I'm not gonna even try to keep my other cables in there because I just wanna, I'll rewrap it really nicely all together. And I'll put that through here to get it out of the way. And you can see that this kind of does a little bit of a spin. As it goes through, you might want to try to recreate that when you put the new wires in. And that gets us all the way to the bottom here. Okay, so we have our 2 new wires. Now, the black wire is going to replace this thick red wire, and the white and blue wire is going to replace the smaller wires on your MK3S, MK3S Plus. The nice thing is there's no polarity on this, and you're going to have, once you're done with this, you're going to have quick releases, so it's much easier to replace a your hot end in the future because you can remove it down here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and connect these. So on this end, your black wire is going to connect into this shielded red one. Just like that. And this blue wire, blue and white wire, is going to connect into this blue wire. Okay, so now we can kind of gather our cables up and just kind of smooth them out. And just kind of estimate where they're going to go. So there we have it. Now we have to release it from the zip ties up here. So in order to do that, we're going to have to release. Okay, so in order to do that, we're going to have to release the zip ties inside the box. You want to be super careful as you do this. You only want to cut zip tie, and there's two of them, one on the top, one on the side, and that's going to let you pull this red cable out, and it is pushed down over here. So that is now removed, and there's another small red cable which is red and black, and it comes down and is just above your part fan connection. And I believe it has a little clip on the top that you have to push down to remove. Okay, so we've got that. I'm going to remove it easily, and now our entire old hot end is out of the equation. And now we can start to wrap these cables around the existing cables. And the only reason I'm doing that is to make sure that the length is pretty much correct, to give a little bit of strength and durability to the wrap of cabling. And once we have that, we've got that good to go. For starters, we're going to have to reconnect the zip ties on the hot end. And this is now super easy to do. And I'll trim those while I'm right here. And now we can just start to wrap this whole thing up. And it's always good to take your time on this step. There's nothing worse than looking at this cable later and thinking I should have tightened that up a little bit better. So, of course that may just be me, but. So what I've done personally is I have this outside edge going on top of the left side edge. And those clips, those removable clips, are now kind of messing things up for us because they're kind of big and they don't quite fit as well as the thin wires. But that doesn't mean they don't fit at all. And in fact, it does add a bit of rigidity to this. And that's one of the biggest tricks with this thing is learning how to kind of spin it and manipulate it as you put it on so that it ends up having a really nice finish on it. And like I say, I have this left edge coming over the top. So for me, I'm turning. You could go either way on it. It really doesn't matter, but just be consistent, obviously. So yeah, that gets us a really nice looking cable here. I'm kind of pulling the wires, making sure it's nice and straight, that it's formed around that nylon. And now I can put the nylon pin back in there. Okay, nylon pin is in, and we'll secure this down right now before we even get the cables installed. And I will say that this is actually my first time working with these Wera Allen tools, and they are definitely making the job a lot easier. And because this piece especially is always like it wants to fight you because there's so much cloth in there. You almost have to get it like perfect. Having this textured wrench makes it a little easier to get a bit of leverage on it. Okay. So the total number of zip ties you will need for this is 4. So we'll plot the old ones here. And these are kind of cool because you just push them in to the little hole and they flip around at the bottom. So once you've got your set of cables, I'm going to leave it loose for now, just in case I need to manipulate anything. But we've got that. And same thing here. Make sure you have it around all the cables you're going to need it to be around, and then you can tighten it loosely until you're ready to cinch it down. But at the very least, I think this top one we can cinch all the way at this point. I don't think there's any point to not tightening that down. Okay, so here's the thing. It's now time to take this block and replace it. And that's off your old hot end. So I'm just going to take my screwdriver kit. And we will release these pins. So loosened in 3 turns. Look at our new ones. There's no polarity on this, so we'll stick those in. 3 turns to make sure it's kind of cinched down. And now we're going to tighten it all the way. Well, I guess it's whatever amount of turns gets you tightened down. Because the old pins were slightly thicker, it felt like. And then you're just going to pull on those a little bit, make sure you're tight and good. And it is. So what we're going to do now is go put this in place. So the fat piece went to the left. We plugged this in here. In fact, I will pull it out for you. We took this piece right here and plugged it in where the old one was. Just like that. And now this one, this is interesting because there is no polarity on this, but the old one had a clip at the top. But what you want to look for is your black, red, and yellow wire because this goes in right above it. Just right there. And so that's plugged in. And I'm going to tighten down the zip tie now. And at this point, I'm just going to gather these wires up. and make a nice little hot dog of them like this, and just kind of push that in there for now. Of course, I need to trim my zip ties first, would be helpful. Okay, so yeah, just nice little hot dog for these. And then the trick to doing this shot is making sure it goes under that and under that top piece. Sometimes you're just like, why is this not closing? And it's not the wires, it's just, it has to tuck under the right places. And now, I'm just going to tighten this case up. And we should be completely done with our hardware upgrade. So, just looking at it, all even, everything looks good. We're ready to tune our PID. Okay, so in basically the last step for this, we're gonna go into our menu. We're gonna scroll down to calibration. And we're going to go to PID calibration. And I'm going to set my temperature at, I tend to print with some PETG and PLA, but I'm going to do it at 240 just because of the fact that I do print PETG. And it's finished, and we're good to go. Alright, well, I hope you guys found that useful. Basically a no-cut upgrade of this thing. Hopefully that helps you out if you're trying to figure out how to get it done. Anyways, I'll be showing you in the next video my print lab and all the 3D printers that I have, my setup. If you're interested, kind of just showing you what I'm up to. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and subscribe. That'll be out in the next couple days. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.